It's All Things Considered on WFAE. I'm Nick Canal. The Charlotte City Council last night agreed in closed session to head off a potential lawsuit by reaching a six-figure financial settlement with Police Chief Johnny Jennings. Jennings was upset about a series of threatening text messages that he received last year from former City Council member Tariq Bokhari, who had written to the chief that he would get him fired and cripple his legacy. Joining me to talk about this story, which has lots of twists and turns, is WFAE's Steve Harrison. Steve, so let's start at the beginning. This started as a spat over whether officers should be allowed to wear outer carrier vests, and then we ended up here. What happened?
When he was on council, Bokhari saw himself as a champion for rank-and-file police officers, and he thought they should be allowed to wear the outer carrier vests, which can provide extra protection from gunfire. Jennings resisted that, questioning whether the vests really provided additional protection, and he was concerned about them giving officers a military combat look. And then last spring, 8 law enforcement officers were shot trying to serve a warrant in East Charlotte. 4 were killed. It was the deadliest day in the city's law enforcement history. After that, Bokhari ramped up his pressure campaign. He built a website dedicated to raising awareness about the vests.
Yeah, and then came the infamous text messages.
That's right. The two men had a long text chain from the late spring and early summer that turned increasingly hostile. Bokhari said he would put maximum pressure on the city manager to fire Jennings. And then he wrote, "I will not stop, and it will cripple your legacy you've worked so hard for." Just a final bit of food for thought. You have 36 hours to call it all off by compromising in some small way. Otherwise, it's in God's hands. Bokhari then wrote later that he has a special set of skills that I can promise you will be a very uncomfortable experience.
Yeah, cripple your legacy is particularly harsh. What happened after that?
As I understand it, Jennings was outraged. Corrine Mack of the local NAACP filed a public records request for the messages, and WSOC-TV reported that police officials that summer coached her on writing an ethics complaint against Bokhari. And in November, WFAE wrote a story detailing all of those text messages.
Yeah, explosive stuff. Then what?
Well, it was a little strange, Nick. Nothing really happened. No other media outlets picked up on the story. Mayor Vilyles never publicly addressed it. Council could have held a vote to censure Bokhari, which is a formal public rebuke. That never happened. And you had a city council member shredding the chief of police, and no one in the city stepped up to publicly defend him. And speaking of going away, Mack filed her ethics complaint in January, and the new city attorney dismissed it.
Okay, so, the city pushed it aside, but apparently Chief Jennings was still seething. Is that right?
I think that's correct. He floated the idea of filing a lawsuit against the city, arguing that the controversy damaged his future earnings once he left CMPD. And the two sides have been negotiating for several weeks.
But the chief never filed a lawsuit.
That's right.
And the city agreed to preemptively settle? On what grounds?
I think that's a really interesting question, and it's hard to say really because no one in the city is talking. I'm not a lawyer, but it's not immediately clear to me what the legal grounds for a lawsuit or a settlement would be. Bokhari's texts were certainly harsh, but arguably not libelous. And being the chief of police of one of the nation's largest cities will obviously come with a lot of criticism, some warranted, some not. So you have a situation where the city attorney's office dismissed the ethics complaint. The mayor publicly never addressed the threatening texts. And now a majority of city council has agreed to pay Jennings, who's still police chief, what we understand is more than $100,000. And for context, Jennings' salary is $280,000.
Bokhari left the city last month and is now a high-ranking transit official in the Trump administration. I understand city council members are not speaking about this because it's a personnel issue. What about police officers?
The Fraternal Order of Police said Charlotte taxpayers should be outraged over the settlement. Jennings hasn't commented on the case, but he's been with CMPD for 33 years, and it's possible this entire settlement or extra compensation is a prelude to him retiring.
That is WFAE's Steve Harrison. Steve, thanks for your reporting.
Thanks, Nick.